welcome back. By the time this video goes up, I think it might actually be 2026. Based on my timeline, right? Based on me and my editor's timeline, I think this might be 2026. I'm not sure how long it's gonna be, but essentially, hello YouTube from the future. This is gonna be my final thoughts on Anomaly Arbitration Sunday, and I kind of want to just give a brief roundup for Anomaly Arbitration as a whole mode for the past 3 versions, right? Because we have been having this mode for the past 3 versions, and as per the rules of trees, when there are 3 different anomaly trees, then we can talk about the trees and the trees and the trees, right?
Explosion.
A little bit of a credentials, if I can say so myself, is that my main account has basically gotten the 0 cycle every single time. My free-to-play account has gotten the 3-star clear every single time. And we have pretty much, I'm not sure if I am, but I am pretty much done one of, if not the most amount of anomaly arbitration testing in the history of all anomaly arbitration testing, right? For every single anomaly arbitration video, I slam in everything. Shout out to Sarah for helping me out as well for the apply mode. So I would say that MrPokke would have a little bit more of a say as to understanding on how anomaly arbitration is going to be like, in this case for Sunday and generally for the game mode as a whole, right? So I will start first with Sunday himself, and then we can talk about the whole game mode. I would say that for this particular game mode, let's just talk about the night first, right? This rotations night mode, night 3, personally, I think is gonna be the most annoying ones. If you cannot make use of the taunting values over here, you are gonna be losing a shit ton of damage, because Judge of Oblivion, no weakness broken, is 50% damage reduction. So if you were to be not mindful of this and you break him at 5 or 4 stacks, and then he immediately recovers after you do 1 hit, then you lose the entire opportunity to do damage at a maximum efficiency, right? And then on top of that, you have the action value delay between 5 to 10 seconds. So it instantly screws up any Sunday speed tuning, Saturday speed tuning, My Day speed tuning, whatever it's gonna be. It is, personally speaking, one of the most annoying bosses. Good thing is, we have a free unit called DHPD, right? So as long as you run DHPD here, I don't think you will ever be that bad to the point of not clearing. So it's DHPD plus someone else that can make use of DHPD, because I don't really think most players, especially if you join the Remembrance Flagship, if you join version 3, you would have put for adventuring. So DHPD as a free option is pretty much gonna be your best bet, right? Other than the night 3 over here, for night 1, if you pull for Remembrance Flagship, you should have almost no issue, right? You should have close to no issue. If you did not pull for Remembrance Flagship, you kind of just play out this wave exactly the same as MOC12. So it is the exact same enemies. It is the Ascendant one, as well as the Horse, which summons the bugs when they get hit enough. So using any of those units that you clear MOC12, you should still clear this relatively well with it. So I think Night 1 is probably one of the easier ones. Then Night 2, it is designed to be anti-crit, but the boss itself is actually pretty easy because it's True Sting. So True Sting as a boss is every single time you kill one of the bugs, you get a stack of vulnerability. So as long as you can keep dealing the bugs, eventually you will stack on so much vulnerability that it doesn't really matter that you have this crit damage debuff. That being said, the bigger problem I would say for this boss is actually the 2 Umas, the Uma as well as the Lion, which you guys would have met in the first Anomaly Arbitration Liger's boss itself. This boss is honestly, the wave 1 is really annoying. So if you cannot really deal with the mobs fast enough, so let's just say you want to use a next or a final, right? And then you keep getting fed with all of those trash mobs, your damage goes up by a lot and you lose a lot of action value, right? But once you get to this part, I personally think it is a True Sting, same mechanics, nothing too crazy over here. For general purposes, I think for this night lineup, it feels a little bit more annoying than Aquila. I think Aquila's night was very manageable, but Liger's was the most annoying. I think Liger's was probably, in fact, as Anomaly Arbitration as a whole, I think Liger's just has the highest difficulty of all 3 Anomaly Arbitration, right? So we are going to talk about the King a little bit, but that's going to be my few cents on night 3. If you're wondering who to clear, so Team 1, pretty much anyone you want, right? Best is going to be Remembrance. Team 2, honestly, pretty much anyone you want. You can run Super Rate, you can run DOT, but even if you run normal crit DPS, I just ran my over here, I still managed to get it clear. And last one, anyone with DHPD can make use of DHPD, you should be able to get it done, right? So that is pretty much it about Anomaly King Sunday himself. Still, compared this boss to the other two Anomaly Arbitration, I genuinely think Ligus was the most difficult Anomaly Arbitration by far. Because we are talking about a scenario where if you did not, okay, like for example, right, for Aguilar, if you did not use whatever team that you wanted to use, whether is it going to be final or like RMC or whatever, you have a lot of alternatives that can get a clear. Roughly around the 4 to 5 cycle range, right? Roughly around 4 to 5 cycles. The exact same thing can also be seen from Anomaly Arbitration Sunday, where some teams are going to be doing very, very well, but most other teams can still get a 4 to 5 cycle clear. It is almost the exact same. Ligus was really the only Anomaly Arbitration where if you didn't have Remembrance Flagship and you didn't have like insane costs, or let's just say like E2 Final, you pretty much just cannot clear that guy. Because Wave 1 was way too fucking tanky, and Ligus just dealt way too much fucking damage, especially the rest of his mobs, his summons. So I'm kind of glad that they toned down the difficulty, so it's going to be a little bit more accessible. And then on the flip side is they made it, I personally think for this zero cycle, it was a lot easier. But that being said, we have the power of E2 5, right? So that's going to be that. But if I do want to try getting this zero cycle, I think it's going to be more challenging, especially if you cannot do enough toughness bar damage, right? So luckily for us, the fact that we have this debuff, right? This debuff is a massive fucking pain in the ass, especially for turn 1 out players. For example, Rapper. Oh my god, man. You're even higher scene than 3v to a certain extent. They will ramp up a lot slower. But I think in the long fight, right? In a long fight across the span of like 2, 3, 4, 5 cycles, you will never feel this as much as compared to the older energy debuffs, where every time they hit you, you minus energy. So I think this is really a debuff meant to disincentivize players from doing zero cycles. It will be a lot harder to get an ultimate, but generally, when it comes to clearing, I think it will be a lot more straightforward, which is also going to be seen from Sunday's 3 different phases. Phase 1, Phase 2, I personally think they are like a little bit scarier, especially Phase 1 with all the steep and everything, compared to Phase 3. Because Phase 3, bro, basically just doesn't hit you until the 7th turn, the 7th day. And then from the 6th to 7th day, if you can deal enough 1000 bar damage and you have enough shield, if you have a DHPD, if you have Hazing, the Iga dying for you, I don't think you should ever die on the final phase, assuming you deal enough toughness bar damage, right? So that is pretty much how the accessibility of Sunday is gonna be. Aside from Super Break, I'm honestly kind of surprised that Remembrance was just still the best. Yep. I genuinely thought that Super Break, because it's obviously a boss design for Break, right? For Rapper, Bodio, and Firefly, I thought that they would be like way leagues ahead compared to every other team. But as it turns out, it's not really the case, because you can see over here, Firefly was really the only one that we got on the zero cycle. Okay, but to be fair, if this was actually like E0 S1, I will probably expect to see like a 2 to 3 cycle. In fact, 2 cycles for Firefly, I think it's going to be 100% doable. But for Rapper and Bodio, with our E2 Ramen and E2 Fugue, it still struggled quite a bit. It still struggled quite a bit, right? Or at E0 S1 perspective. Whereas compared to Cost by Cost, Remembrance Flagship actually somehow cleared exceptionally well on top of Evernight, Anexa, to a certain extent Final. Because if my Final is going to be E2, I am absolutely sure this is definitely going to be a 2 cycle cost by cost, right? So it is really not a boss that is only cleared by Super Break, because a lot of these version 3 options, despite not having Super Break tied to your kit, they can still deal with the boss very efficiently. Personally, I think it's more like the power of true damage. It's just going to be a little bit crazy, especially if you have this unit over here. Really fucking insane unit. In fact, if you take a look at our Plight mode clears, almost every single zero cycles that we did with Cyrene against Plight mode, it's going to be Cyrene, right? So just ultimately, depending on how quickly you either deal raw damage with the Remembrance Flagship, which is just like super high, you deal toughness bar damage with a Nexa, which can scale very well, or you just use the power of E2 Final, which is pretty much one of the best E2s in version 3 as a whole, right? So that is pretty much the different team comps. I think if you want to run like D-Herda, high stance DOT, they can clear, but it is just a little bit more uncomfortable. In fact, our version 2 DPS also clear at a relatively okay pace. Then we have a couple of like super other alternatives. If you were to use, I think Yingli will probably suffer quite a bit, because phase 3, he doesn't hit you at all. So if you want to use Yingli against this, bro, probably not going to be in too good of a scenario, right? So one last thing before we kind of just wrap up, which is going to be between wave 1, wave 2, because it is double 5 enemy targets, right? It is double 5 enemy targets with one main boss. The transition period is actually something I noticed. Cypher does very well here. Also, shout out to the Apply More showcase, where because of the ability where your older AoE units, they don't have the same capabilities of dealing with the single target at the end, because you don't have any other targets to give you more energy, for example, DLI and Tribute, right? Or even like, let's just say like, you want the AoE from like Midas E1 when it comes out, right? But because of Cypher's ability to pivot your AoE patronage stacking all the way into the last phase, where you can just let go of a massive like 30 million, okay, that is like E6, but like even at an E0, if you can just save everything, you will deal a substantial amount of damage at the very last phase, even if you are going to be running a DPS that is not meant to be doing well against single target. So this is less so about Sunday himself, but more so about the potential usage of Car. Because I was talking about this with my chat, I think yesterday, where some of my chat believes that Car might actually age better than Tribi, which I would actually not necessarily disagree with. She actually might age a little bit better just because she has the ability to pivot into single target better than Tribi pivoting. Because Tribi is mainly going to be focused on the average environment, right? The additional energy from the additional follow-up attack. She can't really pivot as well. And even if you want to consider E1 Tribi, it is still going to be a little bit more difficult compared to Cypher, which I think it's a very, very interesting perspective of what they could potentially cook out in the future for any of the endgame content, right? Waves of enemy to start, then come back into a single target, and then you can just pop off with one big Cypher out, bada boom, bada bing, bada bing, right? So that is pretty much it for Sunday, and I guess just at the final topic before I move on, which is going to be Anomaly Arbitration as a whole, because if you want to think about it, this is pretty much our final Anomaly Arbitration, right? The final Anomaly Arbitration in the year of 2025. And the next time we get Anomaly Arbitration, it is going to be version 4.0 going into 2026. So I think the game mode as a whole for Anomaly Arbitration, it scratches the itch for me, because I definitely have a lot more leeway to finally play all these different team comps instead of running the same old things every single time, especially in MOC, Pure Vision, and APOC Shadows, right? The ability to expand beyond just the original 2-team content and having a lot of different buffs to basically make you use of like older teams that you have not been using for a while, I think it's pretty good. Also, speaking of this, I have no idea when the fuck are they gonna add MOC buffs, because like we have it for APOC, we have it for Pure Vision, we have it for Anomaly Arbitration. I wonder when will MOC ever have the little buff thing that you can select out of those 3 buffs, which will then make it a lot more accessible if you want to go up against the standard route of playing the flagship, right? So hopefully that eventually happens. Between these 3, like I mentioned just now, I think Ligas is just definitively speaking one of the most difficult, most shield heavy boss, where it is just Remembrance full sweep or E2 final. Everyone else at E0 to E2, you're just gonna be struggling a lot. Because we didn't have anything called Cyrene backend, right? So if you didn't have Remembrance, this was just way too fucking difficult. Even though they have different buffs for like different units, but it is just still way too fucking difficult. So I'm really glad that they actually managed to tone down the difficulty a lot more for Agra. So for Agra, you would have seen that accessibility is gonna be a lot higher. Zero cycle is going to be a lot harder, right? Because Lygas actually is a pretty nice zero cycle, since he can RNG you the free out for 1 or 2 units. So if you get a good RNG, you get a good roll going. But then again, no one else can zero cycle much, aside from Remembrance Flagship or maybe E2 Final, right? Because this boss is just really just that difficult to begin with. And then going for the current Sunday boss, I hope that they can cook up a boss in which they follow the format of maybe 2 to 3 good teams, right? Because we have basically 2 to 3 good teams around 0 to 2 cycles. And then the rest of the team, at the bare minimum, just make it such so that they can clear. And I know for a fact that this is going to be especially relevant going into version 4, because in version 4, there's going to be a new flagship. Surprise, right? There's gonna be a new flagship in version 4, which means that if they make the boss too restrictive to that specific flagship, which I think is definitely gonna happen, because at the end of the day, all these M content, their main purpose is to sell money, right? It is to upsell whatever unit is going to be there to make you feel the sense of need to get these units, which will then help you clear the endgame content, even though in reality it absolutely does fucking nothing. So I know there's definitely going to be a couple of team comps, especially in version 4, that's going to be much better, but hopefully they can still balance to the point where version 3 and even version 2 like Phase and Aggron and Super Break, they can still clear at a acceptable amount. So something like the 2 to 3 cycles for the top 3 and then 4 to 5 cycles for the bottom team and everyone else, right? I have no idea what they're gonna be doing for the actual boss itself, it is probably gonna be a couple of new features, like new areas, new bosses that we expect in the new world. But that being said, we have been teased quite a bit with the whole skill point thing. Alright, there's been skill point teasers like, oh, like if you've been playing this game for the past 2 months, there's been a lot of hints of like, okay, you know what, skill point, skill point, skill point. The free unit was a skill point still, right? So if that is gonna be the case, I wonder if the new archetype that is gonna be the version 4 flagship, it could bring back some older teams, even before version 3, back into a better caliber. Like, can you imagine if they reworked E2 Dale and make E2 Dale clear as fast as the new flagship? Okay, Archer is version 3, but if Archer cleared faster than Remembrance, because I think so far for the past 3 Anomaly Arbitration, there has not been a single team that actually cleared better than Remembrance, cost for cost. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there is, right? So it will be pretty interesting to see how eventually when the 4 of Remembrance comes, who will be the one to take the crown. Because at the end of the day, Heavy is the crown. Okay, so that is gonna be my basically 2 cents, my final thoughts on Anomaly Arbitration Sunday, and technically my final thoughts on Anomaly Arbitration 2025, because we are gonna be going for the new year. So happy new year! I know that when this time this video is gonna be blah, 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 blah. Use code POKE for 10% off Gamers Ups, and let me know what you guys think. Join Twitch, join YouTube, subscribe, smash the button, and I am gonna go ahead and bada boom bam bam.